What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to The View from the Clipper podcast. I'm your host, James Warner, and as always, joined by my co-host, Josh Sexton. Josh, how are we doing this evening?
Good, yeah, things are really heating up across the NBA, to be honest, aren't they? But certainly in Clipperland, it's been a very interesting, I guess, 2 weeks now since we last recorded. So a lot for us to get into in this episode. And James, whenever there's juicy topics, I'm a happy man. How are you?
I'm doing well. I'm doing great. There's been a lot of news recently, and as of recording, we're recording, I think, approximately, and you can correct me if I'm wrong on this, Josh, but I think we're about almost 24 hours out from the official trade deadline. And there's been some moves. There's been some moves since we've started recording, which I don't think we were expecting. Nothing Clippers related to report on right now. Nothing that really impacts the Clippers, but some blockbuster moves across the NBA. And I've got Shams notifications on, so if you start hearing some buzzing, I'm gonna be looking down, seeing if the Clippers have made another move because the Clippers have made a move this week and quite a major one. I think this one came quite out of left field, really. The Clippers have moved James Harden for Darius Garland. They're also receiving a second round pick from the Cleveland Cavaliers. I can't exactly remember when the news first broke. I think it was must have been Monday that the news came out that James Harden had essentially requested a trade from the Clippers. Now, I think that has developed a little bit more, and according to media members who are close to the Clippers, that this has been going on for a couple weeks. It's been floating around the idea that James may want to move off the Clippers. James has had a no trade clause in his contract, so he's been able to pick his destination. It seems like there's been goodwill between both parties, recognizing the situation of the Clippers looking to rebuild over the next 2 years, and also James's situation. He's looking for his first championship. Whilst he's happy, being happy in LA, it is clear that the timelines clearly aren't aligned. James wants his extension, and the Clippers just aren't going to offer that to a 36-year-old veteran guard who, despite being continuing to be seemingly in his prime, it's just not the move the Clippers wanted to make. So I think this has been a move that has benefited both sides. But I think, like I said when I started this segment, it was quite surprising. Did it take you by surprise, Josh, when you heard the news?
It did, and this is one of those like funny things about, I guess, the difference for us as fans on the outside, really, when like all the stuff that comes out after, and it's like me and you talked about, I guess, transparency from the organization earlier in the season, and that I know this sounds like a roundabout way, but bear with me of getting to this, like Lawrence Frank doing the meeting with the fans and stuff, and I was like pleading for just more honesty, and it's one of the funny things is like even when you get like elements of honesty, there's always going to be stuff that goes on behind the scenes that like we as fans are just not really party to, and there was every chance that James Harden would have, been waived in the summer. The Clippers would have had to have swallowed that 13 million guaranteed money, and we'd have found out at that point that it's because James wanted to re-sign for 2 years, 80 million, and the Clippers didn't want to offer him that, so they decided that it's best to just part ways now. The Clippers will swallow that money. They'll have the books clear for 2027 and kind of go from there. And yet, what's happened is like that timeline's been kind of pulled forward, and it sounds like there's so many different sides to this. So I think it was Chris Mannix from Sport Illustrated who broke this,
Yeah.
but broke the idea that Cleveland were pushing for a draft pick or a swap in the Harden trade talks. So that kind of gives me the inkling that maybe Chris had heard it from the Cleveland side, since he knew what Cleveland were willing to put up. We then had Tomir Azali from Clutch Points who came out and gave a bit more sort of detail behind the trade, and I would imagine that Tomir's side kind of came from the Clippers' perspective, really. And then
Yeah.
I think it's maybe Chris Haynes and Shams, a sort of combination of a few of those national journalists who kind of had meat to the bones from the Harden side and maybe go against some of the stuff that Tomir said in his piece, which was basically that there was this idea that Harden had gone to ask for this 80 million. I don't know if it's called extension explicitly. It's obviously it doesn't work like an extension, and I think it was Keith Smith who's been like at pains to say this on Twitter that it's not an extension. It would be Harden re-signing in the off season for 2 years,
Yeah.
80 million. But this is what Harden was, reported to have internally pushed for, and then basically requested the trade off the back of it. And I was listening to the Zach Lowe show today, and he was basically saying like, that could all well be true, but equally, like it seems like there's a suggestion that this was all kind of like expected from the inside. Like the reason that the Clippers did this like strange player option where only some of the money is guaranteed is with the idea that like they wanted James to resign and feel valued, but they would always like the chance to break from this if it came about. I mean, when we were sat here again, like thinking back to when I was saying that we wanted like truth from the organization and stuff, if you were to say to me that like we would get this value for James Harden in a trade, because at that point I think I was ready to like clear the decks and trade everyone. If you told me I was like that we were going to get, listen, like Darius Garland has the injury issues, and I understand people's concerns around that. But if you boil it down to like Darius Garland's a two-time All-Star who's 26 years old, and they will give us draft capital rather than us giving them anything.
Yeah.
Like I'd have thought you were absolutely mental, James. So like the fact that we're
Yeah.
sat here now and we have Darius Garland on the roster, who I've like been so fond of for so long, and like there's going to be physical exams to do where maybe we'll find out more about this toe. I mean, we'll find out if the move even gets over the line, if the toe thing is really like a genuine problem. But I think it just gives the Clippers loads of opportunity for the future. Another guy who they can kind of base the core around, because like another thing we'd spoke about on past podcasts is like we want some kind of indication of what the future looks like. Well, now between John Collins, who I presume will resign because he's playing great basketball, Ivica Zubac, who is was the only money on the books past 2027. We've now got Darius Garland, who's also on the books past 2027. So that feels like the kind of three-headed. I mean, I'm not going to call it the three-headed monster because it's like none of those guys are like stars by any means, but it feels like a solid core for you to go and build your team around. And with that, I'm just so excited by this move from the Clippers' point of view moving forward.
Yeah.
Before we get into anything to do with Harden and sort of looking back.
Yeah, I completely agree. That was the reaction that I had as well in terms of that initial excitement. I think any fan who was told that James Harden was requesting a trade just before the trade deadline would be like, "Oh my God, it's over. The season's done." And if you were to tell them that, the Clippers would receive Darius Garland and a draft pick, they would not believe you. They would bite your hand off for that package in return. I think whenever I've associated previous moves for James Harden, even the move arguably the Clippers made for James Harden, which was a handful of pick swaps and first round picks, it was obviously a couple of years ago when he's a younger James Harden. The James Harden we're talking about now is 36 going on 37, albeit in, like I said, putting up prime James Harden numbers and clearly still at a really high offensive level, and I'd argue like a top 10 offensive player in the league when healthy. To get that kind of haul back for James now at this part of his career is absolutely crazy, and I don't think the Clippers could have got any better. And even the initial rumors around this trade suggested that the Clippers were being asked to attach draft compensation. So the fact that they've been able to move this to actually getting some, a second round pick back is just great work by the front office. I've seen reporting to suggest that, I think it still remains unclear whether Darius Garland is going to, stick around on this roster because, as we all know, I don't think anyone on this roster is safe moving forward because I think James Harden's talks with Ramona Shelburne yesterday, what she's reported suggests that there is a rebuild going on. I don't think the Clippers are really like calling it a rebuild, maybe more of like a retooling, but that they understand the position they're in. I don't think anyone on the roster is safe from that. So can't say whether he's a short term or a long term option, but in the short term, it's clear that the Clippers want to remain competitive. They obviously don't control their future. So bringing in, like I said, a two-time All-Star at the age of 26 is kind of crazy. I'm not too worried about the injury problems, and I do have a list of those problems, but it's not. I wouldn't classify it as injury problems the way Kawhi has his injury problems, right? It's not like a particular part of him has a problem that he's been managing for a long period of time. He had a left toe surgery in the off season, and since then has obviously been ramping back from that. the injury that he's facing now is actually a right toe sprain. So it's completely unrelated to the surgery he's had previously. I think being a 6'1" guard who's maybe not a very physical player, that's just part and parcel with playing in the NBA that you're going to get these injuries. It's probably just clear that he's just more injury prone than more players, just evidenced by the history. It even goes back further to say, he's had other toe injuries in the past. He's had a broken jaw. He's had various back injuries, eye injuries, groin and ankle injuries as well. Like, this is a standard for any kind of athlete, particularly in his physical nature. Like I said, being an undersized guard, not being a particularly physical player, and I think that's just the demands on an NBA player today, and what can happen. But I'm confident that these aren't problems that are really going to affect his career with the Clippers. Although, I say that I'm also touching wood because we know what happens when players come to the Clippers. We could refer to us as Dr. Clippers. Dr. Clippers will see you now in terms of the medical history going through this franchise is it's kind of crazy what can happen. But no, I'm not worried about that at all. I think he's an awesome player, and it's clear from Cleveland fans' reaction to the move that he was very loved in Cleveland. I think there was also some reporting by a Cleveland reporter on the 92.3 show that I pulled up from Twitter today that I thought was quite interesting. And that one of the reporters over there was told that Darius was really disappointed that the team weren't able to give him a little bit more time. And he's obviously quite upset right now. He's obviously was the team that brought him into the league. He's been there for a number of years and is clearly like a fan favorite. Listening to others talk about him, it was clear that maybe towards the end of the most recent seasons where there's been more pressure on that Cleveland team to win, he's been the subject of maybe some blame for playoff losses. But I think he's only played 20 playoff games in his career, so I'm not willing to say that Darius Garland is not a playoff winner, like how that's thrown around at James Harden, who's obviously at the latter part of his career. I'm hoping we're going to get to see that, and maybe he has the opportunity to right some wrongs. And I'm just really interested in the fit, and we can talk more about that. But I'm just really excited, Josh, and just yeah, I think it's the best case scenario we could have asked for, really, and just keeps our team competitive and watchable for a bit more time. Like I'm not ready to watch this team tank just yet, particularly obviously with the future being the way it is.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Like as you said at the top of your answer, like everything is kind of movable. I think if you're the Clippers still, and what I quite like about this is that like I do think that Garland is a piece for the future. Like I think it is someone that the Clippers are going to look to, and as I say, like that core is going to be Garland, Zubac, and Collins going forward. That's the way like I can envisage things going, and the Clippers kind of like work around that, as in like who they bring in to be stars and that, and will Kobe Sanders be a part of that? Will Jordan Miller be a part of that? You'd like to think so, given what they've both been able to contribute this season, and hopefully there'll be some moves to get those guys on the main roster over the next sort of 24 hours now. But like the Garland thing feels a little bit like there's an insurance policy as well, because he's an unrestricted free agent in 2028. So like even if there's this timeline of like, well, we want to get all the money off the books in 2027. Like the season after, when Zubac's money is up, if you decide that like actually this is just not going to work and we need to go back to square one here, well, you can just let him walk in free agency and you can have all the cap space again, or you can, he's eligible for an extension
Yeah.
in the summer. I don't know whether that's been discussed between him and the Clippers. There's every chance that maybe it has, and that was part of the trade in the way that you'd imagine it was part of Harden's deal going to Cleveland as well. But I just can't help but be excited in terms of what he brings for now and what he brings in the future. Like, the injury reports that kind of came out about Garland yesterday after the trade were basically alluding to the fact that, like, people think he'll be fine after the All-Star game. And I know he's been like nursing two different toe injuries over the course of the season. One was this like turf toe, I think they call it in the States. I don't know what the equivalent of that would be in England. I've certainly never heard someone in England call it turf toe
No.
before. So I don't know if that's like, yeah, like what the equivalent of that is really. Like I can never say that I've personally had turf toe, but it sounds just like a bit of a freak thing. And then his other toe has got injured, and like you said, they're just things that I think can happen to an NBA player, and especially if you are an undersized guard, like people are going to be targeting you, they're going to be more physical with you, and that's going to be the way it is. And I think like I don't know how much you wanted to get into the fit or whether you wanted to save it. So like, feel free to jump in if not. But like,
Hmm.
the thing I had, a concern is maybe overdoing it because like I don't watch Cleveland and get concerned about the Cleveland Cavaliers. But like when I watched that backcourt of Garland and Mitchell, I was like, this is kind of like a Mitchell situation in Utah or like a Luka Doncic situation with Dallas, and you could argue with the Lakers now, where you basically got a backcourt where one guy's relied upon to do all the scoring, and Evan Mobley is so streaky, and Jarrett Allen has had so many injury issues this season as well. That like Donovan Mitchell has just been the main thing that's kept the Cavs afloat this season. And if you have a guy like Garland who works hard on the defensive end but is an undersized guard and can be targeted, it just makes things really hard for someone like Donovan Mitchell to be
Yeah.
everything that he can be on the offensive end because he's expected to help out as Darius Garland's fellow backcourt member basically. So he has to be there to be helpful in that situation. And I know we're going to come on to talk about James a little bit more, but like what they're going to get in James now is just a bigger body, which helps Cleveland. But the Clippers have a backcourt which contains Chris Dunn, who is like probably one of, if not the best point of attack defenders in the NBA. And
Yeah.
I've consumed so much James Harden, Darius Garland content since it all came out, but I think it was on the 213 podcast or Clips and Dip. I know they're obviously under the same like umbrella, those guys. Um, the one of them was saying like, I don't know if you can contain Darius Garland and Chris Dunn in the backcourt because James used to cover for a lot of Chris Dunn's offensive stuff and or lack of offensive stuff. And I think that kind of
Yeah.
underestimates Darius Garland, to be honest. Like Darius Garland is not he's not a nobody scorer. Again, if you
No.
can find a way, and the Clippers can because they have Jeff Van Gundy and they have Chris Dunn and Derek Jones Jr. is back now and they have all these guys that are like defensive specialists basically. They can find a way to make things easier for Darius Garland to the point where he can then go and be an offensive force and negate for those guys' weaknesses on the other end. Like this can all be like mutually beneficial. So I am just so excited about the player, about the future, about the fit, about like the idea that the Clippers have been able to get this done when effectively like if we are to believe that James Harden requested a trade, and I kind of imagine like the way it went down was the Clippers wanted to always have this kind of like break, which explains the player option and the partial guarantee. James wanted the player option, obviously for extra security, will then want an extension because he's like, I want to retire in LA. I still believe in what we're able to achieve here, like especially me and Kawhi, and you've seen that over the past, 19 or 20 games now that like how brilliant the Clippers have been, that there is still things that those two could achieve. But equally, if you're the Clippers, like I wouldn't begrudge like if Lawrence Frank was sat on the scores right now and he went, yeah, like they're both great together and we've seen how great they can be over the past 20 games. But we also know that when it comes to the playoffs, there is just a ceiling, and we can't rely on Kawhi's health, and we can't rely on James Harden to be the James Harden night in, night out, as good as like he will be on some nights. And I think that gets overlooked, and when he gets called a playoff dropper and stuff, like I can completely understand the Clippers being like, yeah, we just didn't think we were going to be that good that we could go and win a championship, especially in a year where the Oklahoma City Thunder are one of the best teams of all time, and Denver are putting it together, and Detroit out east. I know obviously there's like a couple of teams who think they can
Yeah.
contend out east, but Detroit out east have been like brilliant. Like if you're Lawrence Frank, like I don't expect the Clippers to win a championship, so I can't then turn around
No.
and be mad at him and be like, "What? We could have won a championship." Like I didn't think that was the case. So
No.
this just feels best case scenario for James, for Cleveland. For I mean, maybe best case scenario for James would have been to get his extension and retire in LA, but given the circumstances. Best case scenario for James, best case scenario for Cleveland is that they get better short term and negate what Donovan Mitchell has to do on the defensive end, and for the Clippers, like short term, long term, whichever way you spin this, I just think the Clippers have won this trade, and I'll probably still think that even if Cleveland wins a championship, which I know sounds silly, I just think there's like long term legs in this for the Clippers and Darius Garland.
Yeah, I get that last point. Like, yeah, like Cavs might win this one championship, but we might
I
look
kind of
back
hope
and
they
like,
do, to be honest. Like,
yeah, me
again,
too.
I don't think LA, I don't think
Me
the
too.
Clippers will. So, like, I kind of hope they do.
I will root for them 100%. I don't
For
want to see
sure.
a Western team win it. I would love James Harden to get a ring because I think we'll touch on this in terms of his legacy, but I think he's been obviously admired in his time in LA, and I think he's, many fans probably would turn their nose up at James Harden before he came to the Clippers, but I think he leaves LA with a lot more fans than he came in with, and I think he's really like done his reputation brilliantly, and I think a lot of fans, even across other teams, can see that like when the requested trade came in, I think maybe fans from other teams were defending Clippers fans for them, but I've not seen one Clippers fan, turn around and say, "Hey, like James, this is like unfair what you're doing to us." That sentiment that has maybe been shared across Sixers and Nets fans and Rockets fans, right? So,
Yeah,
I think he's
we are not one
no,
of you guys. Like,
we're
don't
not.
put us in with that.
No, they're trying to. I don't know why a lot of fans want to like speak out on the Clippers fans' behalf, but like I've not seen any bad sentiment towards this move, and I think it is one of those rare moves that just benefits both sides. And yeah, the point that I was saying in relation to what you just finished on there was that yeah, no, even if the Cavs win this title this season, obviously like they could point to this trade as well, but I think we can point to this in 5 6 years time when we managed to get out of this era and we can acknowledge that okay, that was the trade that like put us in the right direction really. So I really do think that both teams comes out of this one with more positives than negatives, and I do think this weighs more in the Clippers' favor, particularly when you're getting draft compensation in that move. And I'm just really excited about what it does for Clippers basketball because we've had two isolation heavy guys in Kawhi and James this season. If we look back previous years, we had Paul George and Russell Westbrook. I feel like all we've been watching is isolation basketball, but I'm really excited to see a point guard in the Clippers who's going to really move the ball and push the pace of this team. Because at the start of the season, it was such an old team, and I think we've got to a position now where there's more athletes in this team. There's more younger guys. You've got players like Jordan Miller and Kobe, who are I think they're going to benefit massively from this because getting moving from a guy who's so ISO heavy in James Harden to maybe to a player who's less ISO heavy in Darius Garland, all of a sudden, um, other players are going to touch the ball more because the gravity that James Harden has as a player is now going to be shared across the team. Obviously, we've still got a very ISO heavy guy in Kawhi who's going to demand the ball on most occasions, but we know Kawhi is not going to play every game, and Darius Garland is not an ISO player. He's a guy who's going to share the ball, and his assist numbers are high. They're not as high as James Harden, but they're still high. He loves to share the ball. He loves to push the pace. I think you're going to start to see the Clippers getting out in transition more. It may not be as good as a half court team as they were with James Harden because that is just James's game. But I just think it opens up so many more avenues for the Clippers. And I'm really excited to see what Ty Lue does with this because in the Ty Lue era, this is all he's really known is having like two ISO heavy guys. And now he's just got one in Kawhi Leonard who's elite at doing that. But now he has another star who's completely different. I don't think we've had a player like Darius Garland, at least in this era. So I'm really excited to see how he fits. I don't want to look too much into his Cavs days, and obviously he's just been at the Cavs for years, but even like his play with Donovan Mitchell, because I do think there are issues when you've got two really undersized guards, and I do think it's quite rare you get success out of a team who have two guards below 6'3". That's not really a thing with the Clippers anymore. And I actually think like his pairing with Derek Jones Jr. could be really, really fun because that's a guy who could play the two and be tall. He's been great this season. He's just about to come back as well, which is brilliant timing. And he will, I think, like you mentioned, with what Chris Dunn could do, I think Derek Jones Jr. could also fill in those defensive inefficiencies. And I think even more so, the most of the criticism I've seen about Darius Garland, which you could argue about James Harden, is that there are defensive inefficiencies there. But just watching a little bit of film on Darius, like he's young and he's definitely like someone who puts in effort on the defensive end.
Yeah, he's
He's not a physical
mentally more
bully.
switched on than James on the
Yeah,
defensive end. Yeah.
100%. And I think the defensive inefficiencies come from his size, his physicality. Players are going to shoot over him. Players are going to target him. He's 6'1". Like he's going to be the smallest guy on the floor most nights, but he's going to put the effort in. And he's got Jeff Van Gundy to shout at him if he's not going to. But I think he's got the right mentality for this Clippers team and to work with coach like Jeff Van Gundy. So they're clearly not worried about it. This Clippers team has all of a sudden got like fairly decent in height, just from this move alone and bringing in guys like John Collins, and they're just more athletes on this team. And yeah, I'm really excited. I'm really interested to see this fit. I'm hoping that he can get healthier soon, and I feel like from what I've heard, the sentiment across Cavs fans is that maybe the season hasn't been the best for him in terms of performances and being himself after surgery. But yeah, I hope he can take some time, and I think it's great that the trade deadline is just before the All-Star break. It gives him some time to rest, get accustomed with LA and the nightlife in LA, and work on him coming back with the team, and then hopefully we can see him soon. I do think there are it's sad to be losing James, and I think I always felt in the back of my head that this could happen, but yeah, overall, just like really excited about this move. Like I said at the start, I don't think Clippers could have done any better. And I think we're slowly walking into a new era and what that might look like. And there's a lot of questions that come out of that, but just excited to see his fit on the team. I don't know if you've got any final thoughts on Darius before we start on James's departure, because I think that's one that's probably going to take a fair bit of this podcast as well.
Yeah, the only thing I think I'm done with Darius, but like it just made me realize that like when you said the LA nightlife, like how's James Harden going to cope with Cleveland nightlife? And especially like he's just basically moved to Cleveland off the back of like a snowstorm. Like I don't know if it was in Cleveland specifically, but I know Cleveland is a cold ass place this time of year. So yeah, good luck, James. Don't take any of your lowriders over to Ohio.
He'll be back before we know it, right? I would not
Yeah.
be surprised to see him on the Lakers next season, with all the change that's going on there. But no, I had it in the back of my mind all of this season that he was the one that I felt at any moment he could just say, I don't want to be here. And I think that would have been justified. I didn't feel like it was something I was going to be annoyed at. It was something I was continuing to process that yeah, like, he hasn't won a championship. Kawhi has. Paul George left already to try and accomplish the same thing. Doesn't seem to be much closer than James. So yeah, I think this was fully expected, and fair play to him really for like trying to do that and picking a destination with Cleveland, who are clearly after the same thing, or they're clearly more ready than the Clippers are. He could have easily retired in LA with the lifestyle, but this is clearly a guy who's motivated to win. Like you don't just throw away your living in your hometown, living in LA, being content and happy and being comfortable to going out to Cleveland. Like you said, it's not really James Harden city. It's not really James Harden place to go. But he's requested that move, and I think that speaks to his mentality really. And I've just from his time with the Clippers, which is hasn't really been a long time. It hasn't felt like a long time really. Come to learn a lot more about him, and I think a lot of Clippers fans have. And I think you can probably attest to that as well, Josh. Is that he's a good guy, and his heart is in the right place. Obviously, he's had situations in the past which haven't worked out, and the way in which has handled those situations, yeah, I can understand why fans may not like him, but I feel like he's learned from that and has handled this brilliantly. He's clearly got a lot of respect for the franchise, and there've been some great moments that he's shared with us. I don't know if there's anything that in particular that sticks out with you, Josh. But I've definitely got a few that we can run through. And like I said, I wasn't prepared to be going through this already. I fully thought we'd have James Harden at the end of the season, but yeah, I think it was bound to happen, and fair play to him.
Yeah, absolutely fair play to him. And like it's one of those maybe rare trades where like the guys on both sides. I mean, it's pretty rare that two all-star players in the same position get traded like straight up for each other anyway.
Yeah,
But like even more rare that two guys go away with like the best wishes of both fans. Like Darius Garland is a Cleveland guy drafted by Cleveland. Like he will be loved by Cleveland and go away with their best wishes. And James goes away with ours. And like it wound me up really that the coverage jumped straight to like James Harden requested another trade. 'Cause it's just like lazy, like boring narratives of like, yeah, he did, but like equally has every single right to go and get his money. And like it kind of glosses over like what we think as Clippers fans, which is like fair play, James. Go and get your money. Like we know that we're in this. Like I know, like you said before, like it maybe is more of a rebuild than we're thinking. I still think I'd put it in like the aspect of retooling in the sense that like I don't think the Clippers are doing any of this to get draft capital. I could still be proven wrong in that sense, but like I think
Mhm.
decline in the Zubac for Anthony Simons trade showed that the Clippers are not going to start like leaning towards draft capital. They're going to just see which players they can pick up to like continue to retool this roster. And listen,
Yeah.
if they keep their own draft capital in the meantime, and it means that like there's one season where they're a bad team and can use their own draft capital, I think they've been stung by the Thunder trade and will look to do that. But for now, like it just is a retooling, and in that sense, like as you say, James is like I think he's 38, 39 in August. Um, like he wants to go and win the championship, and he genuinely has Cleveland now are like one of my favorites to come out of the East just because they have James Harden on their roster, and like that will overlook some of the things, some of the issues that like Harden can have in the playoffs and stuff like that, for example, and it overlooks like will there be a transition because of the fit, but like I kind of don't think there will be a transition in the fit on either side. In fact, like I know we've kind of gone off Darius Garland, but then a tweet came up that Jamal Christopher had retweeted from Carson Braber, who I presume is like a Cleveland person. I didn't actually hover over the bio there to see. But he says Darius Garland last year in minutes without Mitchell, 27 points, 9 assists per 75 possessions, 60% true shooting near enough, led the team to a 1.248, so basically a 1.25 offensive rating. Like Darius Garland is good when he doesn't have Donovan Mitchell alongside him in the backcourt being so ball dominant. We know that Kawhi, while he is still an ISO scorer, like Kawhi is not like a ball pounder. Kawhi is like really clever with possessions. Like
Mhm.
James is going to go into a situation where the worry for James when he came to the Clippers was how's he going to get the ball and how's he going to get his chance to score because Paul George and Kawhi are the two main guys there and they're still going to want the ball. James Harden found a way to fit into that offense. Like it comes back to like the he is the system thing. He will find a way to
Yeah.
slot into that in the same way. I think Darius Garland and Kawhi will find like a perfect tandem. And like James just absolutely goes away with my best wishes. Like he doesn't go away under this cloud of like, oh, you requested a trade again. To be honest, like I kind of ask what NBA fans want because we're all going like, oh, the Giannis stuff's boring now, the Jonathan Kuminga stuff's boring now. Well, they're two guys who like maybe less so Jonathan Kuminga, but like Giannis especially. I keep like watching every press conference he does or watch every like thing that gets briefed by his team to Shams and the media, and I'm like, just fucking request a trade. Like, stop finding all these ways to like just change like alter language so that you can like say, oh yeah, I do kind of want to be here, but I'm looking forward to having a new home, and I like scrambled eggs,
Yeah.
but I might want some different breakfast the next morning. Like, sure, man, just request a trade and like kind of respect James Harden for every place he lands in. And to be fair, I heard people talking about like how he did this with the Thunder as well, and kind of forgot that he did that with the Thunder. But like Harden just ends up where he wants to end up, and like I have to respect that because I have respect for player power. And like one of the things I love about the NBA is that it's majority of the time like working class guys who get to like live out the dreams of all of us, and like a lot of working class fans go to NBA games, unfortunately less so these days because obviously like price of NBA tickets just constantly goes up and stuff, but like the reason that working class people like working class kids look up to guys like James Harden and stuff like that is because like they walk that same path as them, like came from less than fortunate circumstances and like made dreams come true for themselves, and now get to be in a position where like with again majority white billionaire owners. Sorry, I know it's a bit more socioeconomic than you probably expect when you hand this over, but like white billionaire owners, like of course these guys should still own their power, and like I respect James Harden for that. I don't like the way he did it in some destinations. Like the Brooklyn thing just felt like it was toxic from arguably even the very start, to be honest, given that everything Kyrie everything Kyrie did during the bubble and all that time. But we'll gloss over that before we get too socioeconomic. Um, but like I just have the utmost respect for James Harden, and yes, he is a Clipper legend. Like I saw, I think, like I always get. I think it was Justin, not Jamal. Like I know they're brothers, so I sometimes get like the two tweets and like and timelines confused. But I think it was Justin who said like he should probably have his jersey retired, and like some Clippers fans and some opposition fans will laugh at that. But like the Clippers have no jersey retired. The Clippers have two guys who spent more than 2 seasons on the Clippers who are in the Hall of Fame in Bill Walton and Bob McAdoo. And Bob McAdoo played for the Buffalo Braves. He played on the other side of the country. Like he was not a Clipper. He didn't play for the Clippers. Bill Walton, I think, was a San
What
Diego Clipper. So Go on, sorry.
The one point guard they had who they're gonna hang their jersey, they decided to get rid of
Yeah,
midway through the season.
exactly.
So
Exactly.
you can't give it to Chris Paul. You might as well give it to James Harden.
Like laugh all you want, but we can't pick and choose our legends. And to me, James Harden is a Clipper legend, and he goes away with my best wishes. And like as I said before, I do hope Cleveland wins a championship if we're not going to, and I don't think we're going to. So Cleveland is absolutely my second favorite behind the Clippers.
I've got James Harden's first role outside the NBA lined up for him already. He should run a seminar for the National Basketball Players Association on how to get out of your contract, or how to request a trade, because clearly he's
Just
the
like
only
like
one
let
who's figured it out.
let Rich Paul go and retire with Adele and like enjoy his podcast on the Ringer and stuff
Yeah.
like that, and like and just be the most powerful agent in the NBA and go, here is how I did it at every single stop.
He'd have players signing up left, right, centre. He'd be the most
Literally.
popular agent. Yeah, would literally be uh, Rich Paul's legacy in that sense. 'Cause I definitely agree. There's not any other players in the league who have this kind of like, I don't want to be here. I'm ambitious and I want to get out of here. And I feel like the Clippers move is probably where he's handled that the best, and he's reached that kind of maturity. And I think the Clippers have also treated him well. They've done well by him in terms of extending him, getting him out of Philly when he didn't want to be there, and showing that commitment to him despite everyone thinking the Clippers were making a big mistake by doing that. And if things have had gone another way, like who knows, this team could have been far more competitive and maybe achieved something. And I think that's like the only feeling I have is I really wanted to see James, Kawhi, PG, even Russ. I would throw Russ in there because there was once that dream that, three out of four of those guys and they won a championship. Even Norm Powell. Norm Powell had won a championship, but like I'm throwing Norm
Yeah,
Powell in
yeah.
there. Like all SoCal boys who just were playing at home. Like that was just such a great season. I know like it didn't end how we wanted it to, but that team was so competitive and no one really thought it would be. And James Harden was a big piece of that. Um, he ran the show and he became. I know there was. I was going to make the point around the system because the Clippers had been the system. They've their game plan has been James Harden for years because not only did he obviously help them remain competitive, but ultimately like just continue to show up for the team, even when guys like Kawhi have not been around. Like all the issues, the injury issues that Kawhi, even PG, have had over the years. Like James has been the constant player throughout all of that. He's been the guy who's shown up. He's been the guy that's been available. He's never backed down from the challenge of trying to carry the team through really tough moments. Even earlier this season when they hadn't had Kawhi and they're going on terrible runs, like he's been that leader. And I don't subscribe to the idea that he's a player that can never win a championship. And I think if he carries that same mentality that he's built the Clippers to Cleveland, I don't see why they can't compete for a championship. Obviously, that's a team that want very much what he wants. He doesn't make this move if he's not hungry for the championship. Like I said, he could have easily just stayed at home, seen out his time with the Clippers, picked his next destination, but he wanted to leave now. He saw an opportunity and he's taking that. And I've got so much respect for him for doing that. And I've got nothing but good memories of James Harden. Obviously the 55-point game from this season against the Hornets, the 50-point game from last season. But I always tend to think back to where it first started and when like if it clicked that wow, we've got like an unbelievable player, which was the iconic sort of was it Snow Angel celebration that he did when we beat the Pacers and we're going for a really difficult run at the time. And I think we were just starting to click and things were starting to come in place. And obviously, there was a lot of media attention, not only on the Clippers, but on James, circling on him because we'd only just acquired him. And for him to put that kind of statement out and be like, you know what, I'm here and I can play and like look at me. That was awesome. And that would be the memory that will always stick in my head. But yeah, just nothing but good memories of James Harden. I wish him nothing but the best. I'm going to be a silent Cleveland Cavaliers fan for the rest of the year, except for is it tonight or tomorrow? We're due to play them. I don't believe either. Definitely Darius Garland is not playing, but the Clippers are playing the Cavs next. So after that game, I'm going to be rooting for Cleveland for the rest of the season.
Yeah, absolutely. And like you're going through memories there. By the way, there's been a trade. So for anyone Clippers fans who wanted Kobe White or Colin Sexton, I'm afraid they're off the board because the Chicago
Oh,
Bulls are trading Kobe White and Mike Conley to the Charlotte Hornets for Colin Sexton, Ousmane Dieng, and three second-round picks. So I think Ousmane
okay.
Dieng was there for like. Was he there for minutes? Like, yeah, I don't really
Oh my God,
understand
yeah.
how that's worked,
Yeah.
but
Yeah, he was thrown in that trade straight away.
yeah, so I think that might be like a trade expanding from maybe yesterday or something. But like interesting to see like two Clippers potential point guard targets going off the board there.
Mm,
I'm not sure I ever kind of bought like the idea of either Colin Sexton or Kobe White because they're more combo
no.
guards than like straight up point guards. But anyway, that's by the by. Like let's stick on James Harden for now because like you were referencing memories, and I was lucky enough to be in the building at Intuit Dome the night that he past was it Ray Allen for the 3-point record. And like that was such a cool experience, not only for like obviously for me as a Clippers fan from the UK, because like one of the things that we don't have with this team that we love is like proximity. So for me to be there on like a historic night for the Clippers franchise, but also for James was just like really cool to like live that moment in the arena when he passed it. Um, to hear his comments after like I did that little like starting five edit series before James Harden actually got announced on starting five. I'm planning to like release that at some point over the next few days, just trying to find like the sweet spot of when to put it out because like that was that night of like James Harden past Ray Allen for the 3-point record, and like his quotes are part of the edit, and like just such like an inspirational guy, and I think he's like an underrated leader as well. I know Chuck Mockler from Clips and Dip has been like at pains to say this that like when everyone was criticizing the Clippers being like where are the leaders in the locker room and like who do you expect to lead this Clippers team? Like James Harden was a leader. Listen, like he might be an
Hmm.
unorthodox one in the sense that like he's not like a Draymond Green. I mean, I'd say Draymond Green is a very unorthodox leader, but like in a completely different way to Harden. Like Harden is more nonchalant and all those kind of things, but like it doesn't sound like he's that nonchalant or like that doesn't translate to him being like not cool or nice or like good at nurturing guys, young guys behind the scenes. And I'm pretty sure in the quote that I've put in that edit, like he references that, like that he wants to be an inspiration to young guys and to kids like that came from similar backgrounds to he did, that like they can go and achieve these like dreams and like because he just stuck with it and was determined. And James Harden is someone who's been criticized for like a lack of hard work or discipline throughout his whole NBA career. And I listen, there's been moments where I'm sure that has been the case, that it's been true where he's not worked hard enough on the defensive end, or moments where like he has been ill-disciplined off the court, on the court, like whatever. But like I don't think as a whole body of work you can doubt James Harden's NBA career. Like he has worked very hard to get to where he is. There's a chance that in the off season, I don't know if I agree with you on the he might get traded to the Lakers, but maybe that's just me being like, please don't let that happen because I want to love this player until he retires. But like he might get paid 40 million for the last 2 years of his NBA career, as in 40 million per year for the last 2 years of his NBA career. That speaks to like how much of a hard worker and how determined and this path that he has trodden. So that was like a great moment of James for me. And like nothing but respect to him as you've said. I love James Harden, loved him as a Clipper legend. I'm kind of like it's not a thing in football really, is it? Like shirts being retired, numbers being retired. I think it's that's safe for like the absolute creamest of the crop in football, or like in Diogo Jota's
Yeah,
case at Liverpool, something where like a tragedy has happened. So like it's kind of by the by to me if he gets his jersey retired. It doesn't take away or add to like his legacy for me whether he does or not, because to me he is a Clipper legend.
I agree. Completely agree. And he was one of the players that I also got to see on my trip out to LA. Obviously, I haven't been to Intuit Dome yet, but he was around and had recently joined the team. And I went with friends who didn't really like basketball, and they came away with James Harden jerseys. So that that goes to show everything about the guy and like his influence across not only basketball but the world. And he does all the work in China with Adidas as well, and is just a complete nice guy. And I've just grown to love him over the time that he spent at the Clippers. And I really enjoyed the quotes that Ramona Shelburne shared yesterday about talking about basketball through the lens of life, really. And when, things don't work out and there's a need to end relationships without, having a crack at each other, which I guess is something he's learned sort of from previous years with obviously the history of Daryl Morey and all that
That's the first thing I
stuff and
thought of when you said
calling him
about,
a
yeah, I was going
liar.
to say when you said
Yeah.
Adidas in China, I was like, Daryl Morey's a liar.
Daryl Morey's a liar. So he's clearly learned from that moment. And yeah, just saying that, if you don't, not seeing a future with each other and outgrowing each other and just having so much respect for Steve and T. Lou, and really enjoyed seeing those quotes. I'm sure we'll see more to come around like his exit from the Clippers, but I think we're both going to be rooting for him all the way, and I'm sure the rest of Clipper Nation will be as well. I think we're really thankful that he got the start to Intuit Dome after such a good start, and I'm glad that he managed to help us come back from that abysmal start to the season because I think without him we're not 15-5 in our last 20. So he helped rescue the season, and just keen now that we see the rest out. We move on from this James Harden era, and I think all eyes now is on Kawhi and like what happens there really, and I think that's sort of the next fish to fry, if you will, because that's one I can't put my finger on. I really don't know what's going to happen next, and I think maybe that's one for next week, and like in terms of the fallout from the trade deadline, because still more moves could happen. I'm not going to say right now Kawhi Leonard is going to be a Clipper next week. I would be absolutely shocked if he's off the team, but I think like a fallout in terms of that regard and what happens next for the Clippers would be good. But I know we've gone on for a fair bit already. Any final thoughts on James Harden before we maybe touch on sort of what's next and sort of looking back at some of the recent performances?
No, just yeah, like echoing everything that we've both said throughout this. Really, like James Harden, Clipper legend. Hope he does win a chip this season. If it's not going to be the Clippers, and I don't believe it is going to be. I didn't believe it was going to be with Harden there, and that's absolutely like no disrespect to him. Nothing's been taken away from him. Like legacy is intact. We are not OKC Thunder. We are not Houston Rockets. We are not Brooklyn Nets. We are not Philadelphia 76ers. And like I said it on a video before, when what was he, like a Mavericks host of like their local broadcast or something, where he was like, "You are not the system, you are the problem," or something like that. Like no, like I said it in a video. James Harden is a Clipper, and to me, James Harden will always be a Clipper.
100%. 100. I couldn't have said it better myself, Josh. I think that was the
Poetic.
perfect way, the poetic way to end James Harden's time with the Clippers. And I really do hope he's not playing against the Clippers because there's clearly a big performance coming if there is. One thing I did want to say before, which I thought was quite interesting, I thought it was worth raising on the pod before we do close off this little segment and talk through some of the recent games, is that I don't know if you know this, Josh, but Darius Garland's dad actually played for the Clippers, so Winston Garland. So they're the second father-son duo to play for the Clippers. So I thought that was pretty cool. I saw that this morning. The first was obviously Doc Rivers and his son Austin, who I kind of hope Darius doesn't end up like Austin. Not no slight on Austin Rivers, but he was never really my favorite Clippers player. So I hope he's maybe the grander of the two. But I thought that was interesting, and I think he's due back from his injury towards the end of this month. Like I said, we've got All-Star break right around the corner, and keen to see how we kick on with Darius Garland because the Clippers have gone 17-5 in the last 22, despite beginning 6-21, and those avid listeners of the View from the Clipper podcast will know how depressing the first few months was for us. But this has been a really great turnaround for the team. And like I said before, Harden has really sort of spearheaded that. We've also like the resurgence of Kawhi Leonard. And I think last time we recorded, the Clippers have won 4 out of the last 6 games, which is good going. I think the Clippers will just kind of want to remain around that .500 and the record if they really want to see out the season. obviously there's every opportunity they can push up the table even further. But personally, I'm not sure I subscribe to the Clippers getting out of the play-in spots, particularly losing James Harden. I think like we've agreed, like Darius Garland is a great player, and I think he's going to fit the role perfectly. But there is like a definite offensive slip there where not going to get that same efficiency. It's going to take a bit of time again to bring him in, get him going with the team, get him learning Tyler's play style, etc. So interested to see how the rest of the season goes. But in terms of the last six games, we started off with a 112-104 win against the Lakers. Kawhi dropping 24, 5 and 4, and James Harden dropping 18 and 10. Um, and yeah, just another statement win against the Lakers, which I just love to see, really. Just absolutely fantastic, and I think in what has been a pretty tough season, I think getting wins against the Lakers has been sort of a little bit bread and butter. I've just enjoyed that a lot. Don't know if you had any thoughts on this game, Josh. We managed to catch this one. Don't have to go game by game, but I thought that was probably the biggest win out of the lot so far.
Yeah, and the Lakers are a strange team this season. Like as you said, that I kind of thought like I hope Paul George is watching that game so he knows who the real team in LA are after his comments on his podcast when he left. That is someone who I would not have the same
No.
pleasantries for as James Harden, unfortunately. Albeit like I can be reflective and I can be civil, especially when Paul's going through what he's going through right now. So I'll stick with the Clippers and the Lakers. It was a great performance and it was part of this like Amazon Rivals week that they were doing as well, which was like kind of cool that it had like a few. I always like when there's just extra bells and whistles on regular season games, to be honest. But like, I think the thing that I loved the most about that Lakers performance was how holistic it was from the team. Like one of the problems with the Lakers that shows up in that game is there's like not enough depth to their scoring. And listen, like I know Austin Reeves is out, and I think when Austin Reeves come back, like the Lakers will be fine. I still think they're a first round exit, so like that just kind of is what it is, really. I don't think there's anyone in that top four who should be losing to the Lakers, and I don't think they'll get into the top four either. Um, but the Lakers relied on LeBron scoring, which they still tend to do from time to time. They very much rely on Luka scoring, and Luka dropped 32 that night. But the Clippers had like what was it, like seven guys in double digits. Chris Dunn being the only one who wasn't from the starters, and Nicholas Batum being the only one who, I mean, didn't score a point, but like wasn't in double digits from the bench. But like it was another weird Nicholas Batum game, which we've had a lot of this season, where like he still contributed quite a lot even without
Yeah.
scoring, which was strange. And Chris Dunn always does. I think Chris Dunn had like yeah, no, sorry, not 10 assists. Three assists that game, but then a couple of rebounds, couple of steals. Well, I was looking at James Harden's stat line there for the 10 assists. But like, you know, incredible from all concerned. Kobe Sanders, Jordan Miller, huge in that game in the way they have been in so many games now this season. I mentioned before, I definitely want to see them on regular roster spots, and I think it's on the Clippers now to find a way to get off the Chris Paul and Kobe Brown money, whether that comes through trades for guys they can then waive, or whether they just waive Kobe Brown and Chris Paul straight up because like they're not on big money. You find a way to get Jordan Miller
Yeah.
and Kobe Sanders onto the main roster now, and that was probably the first time that I was like, okay, yeah, these guys definitely need to be like main roster guys because before that, like I was still like they're young and like I'd like to believe they are part of like our future with the Clippers, but yeah, there was still like question marks over them like from that game and then since then. Like I don't have those same question marks over those guys now. Like they're legit NBA rotation players, and it was the Lakers game that was the first time that I was like, "Oh shit!" Like, no, yeah, they are. They're here and they're Clippers, and it's exciting.
Yeah, I think the Clippers really need to focus on getting Kobe Sanders and Jordan Miller into the rotation, keep getting the minutes, but also contractually as well, and getting them signing on the dotted line at some point, and that clearly the team needs open roster spots. And I guess what is a little bit of a shame right now is obviously with Garland coming in and Derek Jones Jr. coming back, is that those minutes are going to start to fade away for those guys. And I just want to I want to see them try and figure that out. And, if that means moving on Chris Paul and moving on Kobe Brown, then that needs to happen and that needs to be priority. Like I would be surprised if any more trades are made. I think the Clippers need to consolidate what they got, and I've been a big fan of Jordan Miller, particularly over these last 6 games. I think he's been averaging around 15, which again, I'll go back to that question we had a few episodes ago, where I think one of our listeners asked if I think he asked if Jordan Miller could average 16 or 18 points, and clearly with opportunity and time, like that is in his skill set. And I want to see more from him. I want to see him continue to get opportunities, and I want to see how he plays with Darius Garland, and that same goes for Kobe Sanders as well, because I've been obviously really impressed with him. I think more impressed than I have been with any rookie the Clippers have had since SGA and Terrence Mann. So, you're talking not in the last 5, 6 years. So want to see him continue to get his minutes. I'm sure he will do, because obviously he's really etched his way, in some nights into the starting lineup. So that's a guy who needs the opportunities and needs the development to grow. And go back to the Darius Garland point from earlier, I think only going to benefit from getting more touches now that he's not having to play with such a ball dominant guard. That ball is going to be shared around so much, and I'm very excited to see what it does. Even for players who maybe haven't broken in so much, Cam Christie, who's coming on some occasions, and that's a guy who needs opportunities. And whilst there are two arguably, guards in front of him in terms of Kobe Sanders, and I guess you could argue Jordan Miller to some extent, taking minutes from him. I want to see more opportunities for Cam, and there are definitely going to be nights, particularly down the stretch of the season, where we'll need him, and he's going to get far more touches than he has, especially for the times that he's been playing with James Harden this year. So, yeah, all positives moving forward, and very, very pleased with the Clippers' results over the last few games. Was there any game particularly you wanted to talk a bit more about, Josh? Because I'm aware, like, obviously, want to make sure we touch on all the games possible, but also have time to look forward and see where the Clippers can end up over the next 5 or 6.
No, yeah, I'm kind of happy to look forward now. Like it's hard, really, isn't it? Because like I guess any of the games that have happened over recent times are just part of like an old iteration of the Clippers now. So like you don't know how much you can take going forward. But it was like a relatively easy schedule. Take the Lakers game out of it, take the Nuggets game out of it, albeit like we all thought Jokic maybe wouldn't be healthy for that game and it was going to be an easier game. Jokic came back,
Difficult.
and the minute he did, I was like, yeah, we're just, it is what it is. But then like besides that, like win all the games you expected to win. A back-to-back with travel from Phoenix to LA. I know it's not a very long way, but it's still a back-to-back with travel. And then the
Yeah.
trade breaking halfway through the Sixers game again, just like very like accentuating circumstances around that, which I think you can forgive the Clippers for. So happy to move on from those games and look forward.
Cool. We've got, I mean, yeah, if we are to record next Wednesday, we've got 4 games before we'll be sitting down again. So, as I mentioned, Clippers Cavs is tonight. I would be surprised if James Harden suits up for that one. Obviously, I
I'll
said
be too.
no chance Darius Garland is playing. Obviously, he is injured, but the trade still hasn't been announced, and this is as of 8 p.m. UK time, 4th of February. So, that is definitely not happening, and the game is I think about 7 hours away. So there's a zero chance that is happening tonight. Interesting to see. I mean, the Cavs have been on a run. I think Clippers and Cavs have been the two hottest teams in the NBA if you sort of look back to the last 20 games. So interesting to see how that goes. Obviously, the Clippers not going to be with James Harden. Obviously, they didn't have him in the last game against Philadelphia, which they didn't manage to win. I think this is going to be a tough one, but I'm interested to see how they get on in this sort of new area without James, and now that the team has sort of learned the news of him not being around anymore. Is a home game. The Clippers been pretty good at home this season. So yeah, and I wouldn't rule out the Cavs making more moves, because it's clear that they may not be done, and they'll I'd be surprised if they moved everyone else on, but there had been little rumors around Giannis. There've been even some news on the possibility of LeBron coming, but I don't think that was floated until the summer. So I wouldn't rule out them missing some players tonight due to some trades, although I would be shocked if any of the big guys were moved. Yeah, I don't really know who's going to win that one, because it's a bit hard to say given where the rosters are at this point. But I think the Clippers have got then more of a decent run. They've got the Kings, which fully expect them to win that game, even though it's on the road, and then two more road games. The one against the Timberwolves, also potentially going through some change. Will Giannis be on their team? I don't know. It's clear that they're really pushing hard for him.
8 p.m. UK time, that one as well, so that'll be a good one for us.
Oh, well, we'll be
Before the
sitting
Super
down.
Bowl.
Yes, yes, that was literally what I was about to say. I'll be sitting down to watch that one before watching the Super Bowl. That's going to be a good evening, actually,
It'll be a very good
for
evening.
the UK fans of the NFL and NBA. I'll be excited to sit down and watch that one. Um, Unfortunately, probably again won't be seeing Darius Garland in that game. But then again, before we record again, we'll be playing the Rockets. Who, correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't know if they've been playing the best as of recently. Um, but again, that'll be a fun one to watch um, and just see how the Clippers get on now that they're looking up and are in the ninth seed and looking ahead to trying to climb a bit further. I really think that the actual playoff positions are starting to escape them. I think they're 7 games behind the Timberwolves in seventh, but I've seen crazy things happen and you know who knows? Who knows? But I fully expect the Clippers will, start to really solidify a play-in spot for the rest of the season. Grizzlies have just moved off Jaren Jackson Jr. and they're the team that are sitting just outside the play-in. Even the Mavericks just now tonight, the Mavericks have moved off Anthony Davis as well. The Jazz could come back into the fold after acquiring Jaren Jackson Jr., but they're still a fair way off the Clippers. They are 8 games behind. So really starting to feel like the Clippers are going to start to consolidate playing position. I guess it's just whether they get 8 or 9. I think at this point, or even 10, like, we can finish anywhere between those. Obviously, it'd be great to get an 8 seed finish, but they are 3 games behind the Warriors. And I think that is a realistic aim for them. And I think that's what they should target is to try and get more of a beneficial position in the play and to, maybe cause a few upsets in the off season. So, yeah, I don't know, Josh, your outlook for the next few games and how you're feeling and where the Clippers sort of are going to be moving from here. Whether can they continue this streak without James Harden and yeah, what that means for the Clippers' chances moving forward.
Yeah, I guess the one thing that maybe works in the Clippers' favor is that we expect a lot of these other teams to have fair amounts of upheaval, I should say, over the next
Yeah.
few days, weeks, whatever, as well. Like, there's an interesting report coming out that basically all of this like rooting round of Mike Conley is going to end up with him back on Minnesota after a buyout. So that's like kind of crazy. We might just see Mike Conley back in a Timberwolves uniform on Sunday, having been traded from two like through 2 teams since
Yeah.
the last time he played for the Timberwolves. So that's like the madness of NBA trades. It's why we love it so much, isn't it? A bit of a skeleton crew, I guess, against Cleveland. Like, I mean, to be fair, it depends when Garland comes back, doesn't it? If it's after the All-Star break, the Clippers are going to have this kind of skeleton crew for the next week or so. If it's going to be Garland back after the All-Star break, which sounds like it's going to be that Rockets back-to-back is tricky looking. The Rockets, like you're right to say, it's been a bit like up and down recently. Steve Adams got injured basically, and the Rockets' whole thing was built on like we'll take loads of shots and we might miss them, but we'll definitely catch the offensive rebound because Steve Adams is a freak still, even at the age he is. But he's injured now, and they've found like a new way to adapt, but it basically has led to like way shorter rotations for them. So I think like a realistic expectation from that back to back is that we split that. Um,
Yeah.
and then, keep Cleveland, Minnesota, who even knows that they feel like the ones that are up in the air because of trades. Split the back to back with the Rockets, and then you're into All Star weekend. The Kings, as you say, we should beat. Like, there's no. The good thing is like you look at all those teams down below us in the West now. Um, Down below Portland, I should say. Obviously, we've overtaken Portland now. Down below Portland, and like they're all tanking. Memphis just blew it up with Jaren Jackson Jr. going to the Jazz. I'm sure Jar will get traded before the deadline as well.
Yeah.
Dallas just blew it up, sending away AD. Utah has been blowing it up since the start, and then the Pelicans and Kings, yeah, same thing. So, like there's no need to look down anymore. I think Golden State is a realistic expectation. Seems like they could. They've been in trade talks with Draymond Green and sort of shopping him around teams as well, haven't they? So, if they have some trade upheaval to come with him and Kuminga and things like that, like I can kind of imagine a world where they use him and Kuminga to try and get Giannis, which would be a major problem for the back end of the season if we're hoping to get the 8th seed and we're still kind of like chasing them because Steph and Giannis is yeah, just mad to think about. Scary.
Yeah.
But yeah, like it's all kind of by the by for me now. I'd like to believe there's a world where you can get up into that 7-8. Um I just think like if you could somehow win the seven and it's like San Antonio in that series, maybe there's something, but like we just feel like a first round exit, kind of any way that it shakes up. So
Yeah.
give me as many games in the postseason as you can, Clippers, which may mean that you do the 9-10 and then sorry, yeah, win the 9-10 and then get your way open.
Yeah.
And also the most games would be to lose 7-8, wouldn't it? And then to win the
Yeah.
win the 8-9. So yeah, let's go
Exactly. Yeah.
let's go for that. And yeah, just try and enjoy the rest of the season. Enjoy Darius Garland in this fit with the
Yeah.
Clippers and enjoy the future of what's to come because it's so exciting.
Yeah, I felt excited before I got on with you, Josh, but I'm leaving this podcast even more excited and definitely excited to watch some Clipper games this week, particularly on Sunday because that's such a good time to do that. I am trying to prolong this out a little and refreshing my feed on the slide just in case anything filters through. But I think we're done for now. There's
Yeah.
no Clippers news since we've started.
There's
But it'll
a
be good. Yeah.
There's Cam Thomas is out of the Brooklyn Nets game tonight for personal reasons. So Cam Thomas, LA Clipper. Let's leave it on that.
We'll leave it there. We'll definitely do a Fallout pod next week because, like I said, we've got less than 24 hours before the trade deadline. So who knows? Could Cam Thomas be a Clipper by the end of tomorrow?
Please God, no.
Yes, don't. Yeah, we don't even have to get into that. Or we might have to next week if it does
Yeah,
happen.
maybe.
So, yeah. Nothing is happening tonight, seemingly, but I know the minute we stop recording, a big trade is going to go through and might have to jump back on. But yeah, I think the Clippers might be done, and we can talk about any fallout next week and what it means for the Clippers going forward and off season and the rest of the season. And excited to do that. But yeah, thanks as always, Josh, for joining me on this. Really enjoyed it. As I said, feel even more excited, and I hope everyone listening and watching is feeling the good vibes because I think Josh and I have needed this in particular. Like the amount of podcasts we put out with the really depressed, dull sort of conversations around the Clippers' chances and losing games, and
Yeah,
just
yeah.
trying to
I was
find
on
topics
the
to talk
couch the other
about.
week. Look at me now. Look at me now.
I think we said that. I said we're gonna get you off that couch, Josh, and
I
we've
should have
done
been stood
so
up. I should have been
in a
stood up
big
this
way.
one.
In a big way, we've done that. But yeah, I've really enjoyed this one. I hope everyone has enjoyed watching and listening. Continue to follow, rate the podcast, follow us over on X, Clippers UK, and Josh. Remind me of your handle.
J Sexton 24. I've luckily got that synchronicity across all platforms now. So any platform you care to get my stuff on, I'm at J Sexton 24.
Absolutely love it, Josh. Thanks as always, and go Clips go.